Hello, everyone, and welcome to Northern Shield Resources live event. I'm pleased to introduce their president and CEO, Ian Bliss. Today, Ian will be discussing their latest drill results, and I want to encourage you to participate in the live Q&A chat. You can find that in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. But submit your questions, and at the end of the presentation, we'll conduct this chat. As a reminder, the recording will be available on six.com in the coming days, so look out for that. Without further ado, I hand things over to you, Ian, to kick things off.
Thanks very much, Kyle, and good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I'm actually just arrived in Newfoundland yesterday and back on the project site this afternoon. And sorry for being a little bit unprepared and a little bit disheveled, but again, I just got back from the field about 10 minutes ago. And I'm really just here to sort of recap the latest press release on the update on the drill plan. But for those that are slightly unfamiliar with it, we just commenced a small 500-meter drill program, really focused on the conquest zone, which is this portion down in here, with which most of the known gold showings are located, including visible gold in 8 samples that we found last month, just before the drill program. So we're about 400 meters into the drill program right now. We're just under 400 meters. We completed 4 holes. So the ones we are really interested in are this one, 16 and 17. And just to remind you, if you can see my pointer right now, here's where a lot of the visible gold was found last week. It appears to be trending east-west in the trench that we have, but we definitely see north trending or northeast trending structures, and that's pretty important. And so the first hole sort of was underneath the trench, where we hit sort of moderate to minor mineralization, a lot of sulfide, in fact, more sulfide than we see in any rocks on surface, along with strong silicification and brecciation. And the two holes, including with visible gold, which we'll have a look at in just a minute. Hole 16 drilled to the southeast, and also similar mineralization. There's a lot of oatmeal breccia, as we call it, in hole number 17, drilled to the north. And the red bars here approximate those intersections. They're not accurate as of yet, but that's approximation. So that's, to me, pretty clear that it's picking up this northeast trending structure, not the east-west. Not the east-west trending structure. And so that sort of reinforces our interpretation the last year that it's the mineralization is in the north trending structures, as is indicated by this IP. And this IP underneath this image is from the 80-meter depth slice. It's not on surface. I'll show you the on surface in a minute, but this is at the 80-meter depth slice. But you can see how the structure here, these red dashed lines, more or less follow the IP at depth. If we move to another image, I'll just show you what it looks on surface. This is near surface, so within 15 meters. This is the IP. You generally see sort of an east-west trending amalgamation of the IP anomalies, marked by these sort of hot purple colors. But that transitions at depth. All the geology runs east-west on surface, but at depth it translates into north-south trending IP targets, and we see that on surface. So as I say, the sort of key ingredients from the press release are obviously the visible gold, which we'll take a look at, and a bunch of breccias, some of which we term oatmeal just because of their visual similarities to a bowl of oatmeal. But we see, what the important thing is, we see a lot of quartz, a lot of silica, and a lot of sulfide. And a lot of that silica is brecciated. And from our past surface samples, better gold values are associated with brecciated silica zones and a lot of quartz and a lot of pyrite. And we certainly see that in drill core. I'll just flick through a few of those right now. You've probably seen them in the press release already. But here's one of the big excitements, a very large amalgamation of gold. And this core is about 4.5 centimeters in diameter, so that approximates about half a centimeter. Just eyeballing that right now. Again, you can see how this rock is very brecciated. You got different styles of quartz fragments. You got this little white one with the speckles. Then you got more translucent white quartz. and again, some sort of chalcedonic quartz down here, but everything is very heavily brecciated. And we got this bladed pyrite or bladed marcasite, which seems to be sort of a key indicator for what we think is some of the higher grade mineralization based on some surface samples. So highly brecciated, a lot of different phases of quartz and silica going on in this rock, as we do with other of them. Here's another quartz vein. It's not your classic, banded quartz veins, but you still get a lot of these brecciated textures in other low sulfidation gold deposits, especially alkaline driven. Sleeper in Nevada has that sort of similarities, a lot of pyrite, a lot of silica brecciation. And even in places like Wahi in New Zealand, they have a lot of this sort of brecciation and oatmeal texture. But again, you can see the variety of textures in here, a lot of quartz, a lot of silica, both pyrite amalgamations in these sort of fragments, and a lot of disseminated pyrite and stringer pyrite along these fractures. Here's again 2 different styles. Again, you kind of got this sort of spider web crackle quartz veins, lots of sulfide. Here you got a whole bunch of different textures. You got one stage of quartz vein. The background here, all this grayish and green stuff, is a very sort of chalcedonic quartz with both disseminated pyrite and little blebs and stringers of pyrite. Here's again a cut surface of the spider web or crackle breccia. And you can't see here, there's a lot of fine sulfide in this matrix and along these fractures. And then you get these patches in here, which are nearly 100% sulfide, but extremely fine-grained sulfide. So again, key ingredients are, quartz, silica, and pyrite. And we're seeing lots of that. Another brecciated quartz vein. And again, another sort of close-up of this mixture of crackle quartz vein. And it's not quite getting into the oatmeal, but you can see the amount of sulfide we have in here. And again, the different styles of quartz veining, brecciation, and silicification. And this one up here, again, you get multiple quartz veining styles down in these 2 pieces of core. This is almost getting into the oatmeal texture. So this is a cross between the spider web or crackle quartz breccia and the oatmeal. And the oatmeal really has, it's a bunch of rounded quartz fragments, all in a silicified matrix, some clay minerals, but again, you're getting quartz in a silica matrix and lots of pyrite, both disseminated in that matrix, and it's often sort of concentrated surrounding these quartz fragments, which I say is quite similar to some photos you can see of a sleeper deposit if you Google that on the web. So all the right ingredients. We do have some visible gold, some of the coarsest we've seen, if not the coarsest we've seen to date from root and cellar, and some pretty spectacular looking core intersections. So, and again, one of the interesting things about it is we haven't seen some of these textures, especially these oatmeal breccias and a variety of brecciation and silicification. Even though these are a few meters or maybe a few tens of meters below surface, we have not seen this style of mineralization and quartz veining on surface. So it just shows how rapidly things can change with depth. So as I just going back to the first diagram, I say the sort of key intersections are 16 and 17, though both other holes have intersected mineralization, particularly sulfide, silica, and quartz. And so we think it's an excellent start to this drill program. We're currently on just starting the 5th hole. We're just about to start the 5th hole, and probably one more after that. So certainly based on the intersections to date, the visible gold and all these textures, we're pretty optimistic that we're onto a significant epithermal system here. So with that, I'll happy to answer any further questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. And just a reminder to the people that came in late, there is a chat feature in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to ask any question during the Q&A session here. We did have some pre-submitted questions, so I'll get right into those. This term, and this goes for me as well, I personally haven't heard of it before either, but the oatmeal breccia, can you just elaborate further on the geological significance of these breccias? You did touch on it in the presentation, but if you want to go into a further elaboration on that.
Yeah, I mean, this term is not as far as I believe, one that's, you'll find in the geological dictionary. It's just we use it because it stood out as very different to us, and it kind of had that look of oatmeal to it. I believe that it describes some breccias in the Wahi deposit in New Zealand as oatmeal breccias. I'm not sure how they differ from ours, but it's simply a texture that our geologists and we kind of used because it stood out, and we wanted to differentiate it from some of our other breccias that we see. How significant it is, we don't know. But I say the thing we like about it is there's a lot of pyrite, a lot of quartz, and a lot of silica. And I say, this clearly has gone through multiple phases of brecciation, and you assume every phase of brecciation has the opportunity of bringing out more fluids and hence more gold. So it stands out as very unique, based on the mineralogy. And I say, from what we know from some of the higher grades samples we have on surface, the common thing they have is a bunch of silica, quartz, and pyrite. And I say the secondary quartz is important. We see a lot of silicification on surface with pyrite that does run gold, but the better grades when you start adding these quartz veins or quartz fragments or quartz blebs, and that's what we see in this oatmeal breccia. It's just a lot of quartz, a lot of silica, and a lot of pyrite.
Great. Then we did go on the CEO chat board, and there was a few questions there as well. And one to piggyback off this, an individual is wondering how many meters of that oatmeal core did we hit?
I don't know offhand, but it was sort of multiple intervals, and I think geologists are sort of explaining. We see kind of a clear transition of a variety of styles of mineralization, the alteration with that, then into the oatmeal breccia veins. I seem to remember one of the holes was about 3 or 4 different intervals, roughly a meter each, I would say, but with more mineralization of other breccias in between that. So you're looking at overall in hole number 17, it was multiple tens of meters of mineralization. It's not all oatmeal breccia, and there's intervals of non-mineralized but alteration in between that. But it's a few tens of meters of various styles of silica, quartz, and pyrite. So pretty good. We're not just talking a half a meter or a meter here. We're talking multiple meters of silica, pyrite, and quartz mineralization.
Definitely. Another individual is curious about drilling and your plans going forward, specifically in regards to the big target 200 meters north of the bedrock gold discovery.
Yeah, we're probably going to be targeting that in this drill program, or at least the shallower portions of that, simply because the drill rig we have has limited capacity. But we will be testing that based on the modeling and where we think the IP is. If it's deeper, ultimately it proves that IP is a greater depth. We'll get another drill program for that, but we're going to start testing that out. We don't want to jump too deep, because the idea is that this program was to track the mineralization from near surface to depth, and it's tempting to go for the big swing and go for it. So we will be testing that at moderate depth, and providing the IP and the modeling is correct, we should hit it, but it could be a little bit deeper than the initial model. But yes, the idea is to test out a portion of that deeper IP and track it to depth.
Thank you. One question here, and I'm not familiar. Was there a big storm that happened or something? I'm just going to read their question verbatim. On-site terrain for moving equipment around after storm, has it improved? And I second will the north target be drilled? What's the point of a demobilization?
Yeah. So I think the storm is that Hurricane Lee, I think it was, that came up the eastern seaboard. Actually, we had more rain the 10 days before that storm. Ever since I arrived, from the beginning of the drill program, our geologists were here, it was raining, so everything was mud to begin with. That storm didn't produce a lot of rain, it produced a lot of wind, but it's not so bad, actually. We have fabulous weather the last few days, and everything's drying out. And it was just for the first few days, it was a little bit of a problem getting everybody in place and mobilizing equipment in, but everything's under control now and running smoothly.
Maybe you could elaborate on your exploration program again, because an individual was wondering if you're trenching for the discovery boulders.
I'm not sure the discovery boulders. You may mean the visible gold boulders we had in the eastern portion of Conquest. The plan is to still trench that. We're waiting for new permits, and we're actually looking. I mean, the drilling may turn up the source of that as well. But otherwise, we look to trench and potentially do some shallow drilling in that area as well. But we're still waiting for the trenching permits for that specific target.
And another individual wanted you to provide some context to IDFX results from the last news release and whether or not you're going to put a few holes into the copper target in the initial program.
Okay, I think there's two questions. I think the copper target, they may be talking about root and cellar. So starting off with IDFX, we've been looking at the data for IDFX for real last year, both from our own perspective and there's been some interested parties looking at IDFX, and in that process, it was good. It kind of made us look at it with new eyes and sort of a new perspective. And saying that process, it just reminded us what a good project it was. I mean, there's a lot of PGEs. We see continuous PGE mineralization for 5-kilometer strike length over widths of up to 60 meters. A lot of it's low grade at 0.2, 0.4 grams, but still a lot of PGEs. You don't see that very often. And so we looked at the data, we had an idea, and we went back to the northern portion of that trend, which hadn't received a lot of work, some sampling. And what we see along this main 5-kilometer trend is it's disseminated mineralization with very low sulfide content. So that 0.4 gram in that essentially 5-kilometer long reef is only associated with 0.3% sulfide. You barely see 0.3% sulfide in a rock, yet it's running 0.2, 0.4 grams per ton. We know there's a linear relationship between PGE content and sulfide content, such that if you increase the sulfide content by about 10 times, you expect to see a 10 times increase in PGE. So suddenly, instead of having 0.3% sulfide, you have 3%, which is still not a lot of sulfide. Now you're up into the 1, 2, 3, 4 gram per ton potential PGE. And so the idea behind our IDFX is we don't need to find massive sulfides to find a potential economic deposit, whether it's PGEs with or without the base metal byproducts, or perhaps that are the primary product. And so we wanted to look in some areas which we thought may have higher content of sulfide, still disseminated, not massive. And so we looked up in the northern portion, and we found one patch that had higher sulfide content, in this case around 10%. And so we see much higher PGEs than you would even expect on that sort of linear relationship, especially in the base metals. And this is the highest base metal sample. So that sample ran, I think it was 1.1% copper and just under 0.4% nickel. And so it's not only showing us a higher sulfide content exists and is carrying higher PGE grades, but there's also some higher base metal content. And to say, you might expect those sort of grades in massive sulfide, but this is only 10% sulfide. So it's kind of testing a concept that we had to, look at this area a little bit closer. And it's, kind of getting late in the year to go back there and do anything more. But it provided a little bit of proof of concept that there is more disseminated mineralization around. And the surprise for us there wasn't just carrying PGEs, but it was carrying pretty significant copper nickel. And so we'll see. We'll do some more, desktop studies over the winter and decide to go back. But there's obviously a lot of incentive to have a closer look at IDFX. And the thing about IDFX too is most of the other nickel PGE occurrences, whether you're looking at Raglan to the north or the Labrador Trough from there to Shefferville, they're hosted in ultramafic rocks. This is in a mafic rock, so a norite. You don't see a lot of noritic or gabbronorite rocks in that portion of the Labrador Trough. And so we're looking at a unique, magmatic plumbing system here, and, who knows what it could lead to. But, there's a lot of disseminated sulfide in there, and this needs to be followed up by Northern Shield or by someone else. The other question was on the copper. I believe they're referring to the copper targets at root and cellar. Again, there's two portions of that. Most of the copper we've found in the past, just to the southwest in these quarries and pits. We haven't got enough geophysics over that area to run a drill program. I don't think it's worth shooting a drill hole underneath these things just on a shot in the dark. We do have a little bit of copper in the sort of northern conquest zone, and that's associated with what we think are B veins. The B veins are what a lot of porphyry experts use as a vector towards copper porphyry mineralization. And as I say, we'll be having a little bit of a closer look at that now that I'm here, and with our geologists, and seeing if we can pinpoint one of the drill holes into this copper target. The problem is it's diluting a little bit from the gold. So yeah, it'd be nice to come up with a copper, but at the same time, we're obviously seeing some pretty nice looking potential gold mineralization, and at the same time, it'd be good to follow that up. So we're sort of deciding that as we go along as to what we see in the drill core, whether it's worth continuing on with or taking a risk and jumping to the copper, or just focusing on the gold and try to get a better understanding of where some of these oatmeal breccias and other breccias are sort of leading to. So it's not a bad copper target. We haven't got a lot of data on it, and so it's tempting to drill it, and we may do it. We'll just have to see in the next week or so.
Perfect. Thanks, Ian. I'm just going to the chat now, and with every company that has a drill program, we have questions about expected assay turnaround times. Do you have any guidance on that?
No, I think the big backlogs in the labs that we saw in the past years is not as much as a problem as it used to be. So samples are sort of going in continuously in a batch, and so the specific time frame, I'm not going to put anything on it, but it's several weeks, not several months, as opposed to what it has been in the past.
Can you share where the assays are being sent, or the cores being sent to?
Yeah, the prep lab is in New Brunswick, and then from there it gets shipped to an ALS lab, but they ship it to whatever lab has. What I understand, they ship it to whatever other labs has the capacity at the time. But it's prepped in New Brunswick. But not assayed there. It's just prepped. It's crushed, and then they sent out the pulp, which is a smaller package that can analyze to whatever lab has the best capacity.
Nate is wondering what your initial for the shallow program is the shallow program meeting your initial planned objectives?
Well, yes, as we're seeing, promising looking rock, as you can see from the photos in the press release, along with the visible gold. So yeah, I guess you can even argue it was even better because we didn't. You're always hoping for big intersections and nice looking core. We just don't know what they're going to contain. But that one big fleck or amalgamation of gold looks quite considerable, and I say the oatmeal breccias, the other breccias look quite promising. So yes, it's met our expectations. You always learn something new, and one of the things that you're learning is that there's a very rapid transition with depth. From what we see on surface, even in the trenching, and now into drill core a few meters below, there's a rapid transition in the styles of mineralization, which we didn't expect that, but it looks like it could be gold bearing. So yeah, it met our expectations. And I say we didn't want to jump too far back and hit it too deep. The idea was to go to where we had mineralization and slowly track it down, and so that's been successful. And at least in 2 different holes now, we've hit this oatmeal style breccia along with other things, and so we can begin to join things up and follow the plumbing system.
Perfect. We had a couple more pre-submitted questions. An individual is wondering about the update on the Quebec payment.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into great detail. Like as a court case says, we won that litigation that allows us to file, and I'll go back and file the objection that we wanted to back in 2017-18. We're going through that objection, and we think there'll be a speedy resolution to it, relatively speedy. It can never be fast enough for shareholders, let alone management and directors. I mean, we've been fighting for this for a long time, and we think we've been patient enough. But we're optimistic it's going to move. It's going to move relatively fast now, but we don't have a timeline. But the process has started, and I think we're going to see some relatively speedy resolution on that. But if you want a time of days, weeks, or months, I just don't know. Obviously, I've been battling this for some time, and I'd like to see the end of it as well. So hopefully soon. That's all I can say. But it is in the process. We're working on it.
Last question I have for you, unless another one trickles into the chat here, but with these photos and this update, have you seen more of an expressed interest in Northern Shield? Or are you getting a lot more phone calls?
Yes, I mean, obviously I've been traveling a lot the last week or so, but when you get visible gold like that, it kicks off some interest for sure. And so yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people are going to wait for assays, but you can say that I think people that know these things are intrigued by those textures. But the assays will tell. But there's continued interest and renewed interest in this project.
Perfect. That's all the questions we have in the chat there, Ian. So for the attendees, thank you for joining. Just a reminder, if you did tune in late as well, that this is being recorded, and we will probably have the recording available tomorrow, so you can watch it then. But I'll leave it for you, Ian, to have any closing remarks.
Yeah, just we're very optimistic. When you look at those photographs, I don't really know, can't tell you anything more than you see. We don't know how much gold is in there, but I like the look of it. We like the look of it. We've hit it on multiple drill holes, and it looks like it's part of the a real thing. And so we're optimistic now that we're beginning to track this thing down.